Welcome to Marketing Mixologists, the podcast that brings together marketing and mixology for an exciting journey into modern-day marketing.
We think marketing should be like your favorite cocktail, fully balanced, flavorful, and memorable.
We'll explore all things related to marketing, from understanding the basics to uncovering advanced strategies.
With special guests joining us each episode, we'll share insights from experts in the field and share our favorite drinks.
Whether you like it shaken or stirred, grab your favorite beverage and join us as we learn more about how powerful marketing can be when mixed well. Cheers!
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Mixologists. Today we are going to be talking about the importance of personal branding. So today I have Shannon and Claire with us. Shannon, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I am a local, multi-passionate entrepreneur. So I am first and foremost a branding photographer, and I have been in business for nearly 17 years with photography, and have recently started a second business, and that is a content creation studio in Mechanicsburg, PA.
And as someone who has been to your content creation studio, I can attest that it is awesome and that your work is amazing. So let's dive right in and I'm sure this is kind of a silly question, but just for anyone out there who may not know or has not done a lot of research on it, can you tell us exactly what personal branding is and why in the marketing world it is often referred to as the dark art?
Yeah. So personal branding, I basically look at it as, how do you want to be viewed in the world? What are you all about? Why should people care? And I think that it's interesting because I personally have never heard to it referred that way. So when I saw that question come through, I'm like, that's a really interesting way to look at it. And what I would say is it's multifaceted. So number one, when we're building a personal brand, I find that we have to go through almost like a dark night of the soul ourselves when putting it out there into the world. We often face imposter syndrome. It tests our limits and our resilience. And we really have to grow some thick skin to put yourself out there in a big way and build your personal brand. The other reason I could see it being called that, a dark art, is there can be a self-serving dark side to building a personal brand. If you're a self-serving person, if you have any manipulation within your brand or your business model, I could definitely see it being referred to as kind of like a dark art and a manipulation tactic.
Okay, awesome. Now, in the marketing world, we know that personal branding is definitely very, very crucial. So can you explain how personal brand authenticity, why that is so crucial, not only from a personal perspective, but why that's important for, a CEO of a business, how your personal brand relates to everything that you're doing in business?
Yeah, well, if we go back to, the way I view a personal brand, it's how you are viewed in the world. And so I think being authentic is integral and building a brand that people will trust. I think we all have bullshit meters and people can tell when you're a bullshitter online and when you're not telling the whole story and you're not being authentic. Now, here's the thing. I don't think that we owe the world our entire life all the time. We get to shape our brand to the extent that we want to let people in. Not everybody's privy to everything in our personal lives. I think it depends on who your audience is, what your message is, and what you're really putting out there into the world as far as how much of your personal life to share and bring into the big picture.
And, in building the personal brands, I think it goes without saying that there's a lot of storytelling that comes with that. You as a person are telling your story, your brand story, how you want to be known in the world. So when you're helping, let's say I come to you and I'm like, Shannon, I want you to help me build out my personal brand. I want to do, a photo shoot. And here, how would we go about kind of branding me or anyone that came to you? How do you go about that? What's that process like?
Yeah. So when I'm working with a client, let's say somebody who doesn't have a brand yet, we need to start with the basics. And I call it the 3 C's. It's personal clarity, client clarity, and business clarity. Who are you? What is your story? Why does it matter to the audience that you're trying to reach? And I think that it's important to shape it in that way, because if you're trying to reach stay-at-home moms, you're going to have an entirely different approach than if you're trying to reach CEOs and market to them for consulting, for example. And so when building a brand, we start there and we look at what makes you different and what makes you unique. You don't want to be like every other person out there in the world. You don't want your social media to look and sound the same. You don't want your website to look and sound the same. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in the noise. Something that I learned from a mentor very early in my career, a photography mentor, was when everyone else zigs, zag. Because if you're at all familiar with the photography world, there's always a trend that's out there. So let's go like 2 decades ago when I was first getting started in photography, it was like black and white photos with a touch of color.
I remember the trends.
Yeah. And then there was like the vintage photo trend, and now it's light and airy or dark and moody or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're branding yourself in that way. But here's the thing, trends come and go, and you get lost in the noise of everyone else who's doing the same thing. So I always tried to take a different approach and just stay true to how I shoot and my vision, and not get sucked up into the current trends of the photography world. And that's just an example from my career. You can apply that to any career that's out there.
Right. So you've been doing this for a while. Can you share, you don't have to necessarily name drop anyone, but can you share an experience that you had that, went really well with helping someone in their personal branding that was, very successful?
Absolutely. I have a lot of stories. Somebody who comes to mind, though, is a client of mine, Jamie, and I will share her name because she shares about this very freely. The thing about building a personal brand is it can be a truly transformational process, and allowing you to step into this bigger version of yourself, right? And that is one of the key takeaways that my clients experience, even with a photo shoot. You think you're coming for the pictures, but it is so much more. And Jamie had more to say about the transformational aspect in her life and in her business. She loved the photos, but it's like she saw herself in this new light and went on. She was already killing it in business, but completely developed this other side of her business and is leading transformational women's retreats, and truly has gone on to do some pretty epic things because she started seeing herself in a different light than previous to building that personal brand with me.
I think that's awesome. And I can kind of relate to that in a sense, where the type of person that I am is when I have somebody motivating me or making me see things that I might not be seeing, it totally flips a switch, and I feel like I can do anything. And then in turn, that makes things happen. So I think one of the best things about personal branding is that reason, is it really does help you see yourself. Sometimes the way that other people see you that you didn't even realize, because you're kind of looking at it from an outside perspective then. I think that's great. Personal branding, obviously, social media, huge. You got to put it out there, right? And there's so many different social media channels. So I would assume that it kind of maybe works the same way as we would kind of figure it out for, a B2B business. When you are building out your personal brand and you want to effectively use social media, how do you decide what channels do you want to be on, or what you should do, or what you should post or shouldn't post? How does that work maybe differently than from a business perspective?
Yeah, so I think that knowing where your ideal audience members are hanging out online. So, for me, that's Instagram and Facebook for the most part. Maybe if you are more of a B2B, working with C-suite individuals in the corporate world, obviously LinkedIn is going to be your sweet spot. But also, what do you like to do? When you're first building a brand, you probably don't have somebody else running your social media for you. So I tell my clients, pick one platform, get really good at it, get really good at that one thing, and then expand from there. And do the one that makes the most sense for you personally. If you hate TikTok, don't try to start a TikTok, even though it might be a smart move. You're never going to keep up with it. So
Right.
do what comes the most naturally, even though none of them are probably going to come very natural at first, but whatever you can have the most enjoyment in and make sense for your audience is what you'll be consistent in. And consistency really is the key to growing your audience. The more consistent you are in posting, the better results you're going to have in growing who is actually following you and seeing your social media.
Right. All right. Awesome. I do want to take it back to, because I did, a little bit, I already obviously work in marketing. I know, how personal branding and business works together, but I really wanted to dive in, here, at UMW, a lot of our clients, we're also creating social for them on their personal channels on LinkedIn and things like that. So I really just want to dive deeper into your perspective on how, even us as an agency or any listeners who, in their own marketing team are managing, a CEO's brand, how can they effectively personal brands their CEO to align with the corporate and business branding?
Yeah, well, I talk about that. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, and I've always stressed the importance of building that personal brand first and foremost, because your personal brand will follow you no matter where you go in life. You can add on other businesses. You can do something completely different, but your personal brand is kind of like the backbone and the umbrella under which everything else that you do is going to fall under. And so if you're a marketing team and you're trying to brand the CEO with a personal brand and the overall company, I would just look for where is there synergy between, these are his core values, his personal beliefs. This is what he stands for in the world and how he shows up. And how can that amplify what you're trying to build for the company? And how does his personal brand influence the way the company is run and the culture of the company as well?
Okay. And based on that, I feel in marketing, it's always super important, to build that, trust and credibility. And I'm more inclined, just myself to buy something that, a CEO or someone in the company is continuously sharing and talking about how much they love it and giving the real world use of how they're doing it and can build a real personal connection versus just seeing a random ad. So, how can the personal branding create credibility and, help kind of boost, the lead gen or boost, what other marketing KPIs, a brand could be looking for just from, personal branding?
Yeah, well, I think you partially said it. It's we love to relate to other people. We are creatures that need that human interaction, and stories sell, personal brands sell. Personal brands create that connection with people. So they feel like they almost get to know you. Mm-hmm. They start looking at you more as not a friend, but somebody they look up to, somebody they look forward to seeing online. If they really resonate with your story, they want to know what's next. It's almost like you're watching a movie and you're on the edge of your seat, what's going to happen next? What cool things are they going to be doing? And that creates a lot of influence over people's buying decisions. And I think too, that's where you need to be careful with how you are framing things and putting things out there, because with that, I believe comes a certain amount of responsibility with how we are shaping people's views of whatever it is we're trying to sell.
Okay, Shannon, I want to talk a little bit about overcoming challenges, because I think this is probably something that I would have the most difficult time with. And I think a lot of people would. What are some of the common challenges that you've seen people face when you're helping them build out their personal brand?
Great question. And this is one of my favorite things to do with people, because seeing how they're able to navigate this and become stronger as a person and more confident in who they are is incredibly fulfilling. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the biggest things is imposter syndrome and questioning yourself. Who am I to put myself out there? Do I really know what I'm talking about? The fear of what other people think about you. It's one thing to have a photo shoot and have amazing pictures, but then putting them out into the world is a whole other hurdle.
Right.
Because really seeing yourself elevated in that way when maybe you haven't seen yourself in that light before. It's a transformation. And it's something that, at a subconscious level, our brains are trying to keep us protected and safe and doing the same old thing all the time. So any kind of change that we're trying to make, even good change, it's going to be hard to make. I think that, people can sometimes misconstrue what we're trying to say, or basically there's haters out there too, right? There are people out there who want to see you fail. And so getting to the point where you have so much confidence that you really do not care what they have to say or think about you is a hurdle that has to be overcome when you're building any kind of business or brand, for sure.
Well, I like that you brought up imposter syndrome, because this is something that has come up on previous episodes that we've recorded. And it normally comes up when speaking with other female CEOs, entrepreneurs. So I'm just curious, this is kind of like not really on topic with the personal branding, but still kind of, is there any advice that you give to people when they are suffering from imposter syndrome, when you're, going through the personal branding, or just in general, when people come to you like, oh, I don't think I'm right for this. I don't know what I'm talking about, but deep down that they do.
Yeah. So this could be a whole episode, but I will keep it concise for our purposes today. And this is where mindset work and working with a coach really comes into play, which is a big part of what I do with clients. I am actually trained as a life coach and mindset coach as well, because it's such a big piece of building a brand. And so when the mean girl in your head comes out to play, you need to be able to build what I call a belief bridge to the truth. And so as you are trying to embody this new person and build this brand and elevate yourself, all of those thoughts are going to come up. Who are you to do this? Why is this happening right now? What are people going to think? So I think number one, write out those thoughts, get them out of your head and onto paper. Once they're out of your head and onto paper, you're going to need to pick a better thought that takes you closer to your goal. So I always say there's one sentence that will change your entire life. And that is this thought taking me closer to my goal? And if it's not, choose a better thought. Easier said than done, but the more that you do it, the easier it's going to be to move through those negative thoughts that will inevitably continue to pop up. Because I've worked with women who are just starting in their careers to women who are making 7 figures and more a year. And let me tell you, the battle is always the same. New level, new devil. Those thoughts will come up every time you're kind of up leveling in your life and doing something new. And so having like a rock solid mindset that is going to enable you to move through those thoughts is really the key, because it's all in your head.
No, that's amazing. That's great advice. And that's advice that I haven't heard of before. So I would like to put that into daily practice for myself. There are times where I will say something that I was like, wow, I can't believe I just pulled that out of my brain. Maybe I do know what I'm talking about. Maybe I do deserve to be where I am. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And you know what, there's one more thing with that. And that is our brains love proof of what we're trying to do. And so having a practice where every day, especially if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, where you are writing out your accomplishments. And I have something like I tell my clients to have a smile file. And that is just testimonials people have given you, nice things people have said about you, like gather them in a spot and read them from time to time and remind yourself of who you really are.
I feel like our first episode we did with Jill Bruno from Rocket Reach. And I feel like if she didn't mention it on the podcast, I feel like she has talked about this before in other webinars that I've seen her do. But she had something very similar where she would have she said, put a file on your computer. And anytime someone says something nice or you win something or you had a good day, like drop it into that file when you're feeling down on yourself and go back and look at that. And it'll completely change your mindset. So I think that is definitely something that I'm not utilizing. I should be utilizing. We should all be utilizing that, because everybody loves a good pick me up. Having a bad day, look in your smile file. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about, of course, one thing important in marketing overall is KPIs. We've got to be measuring the success of all of the things that we're doing. So from a personal branding perspective, what are some of the KPIs that a person should be looking for to see if their personal branding efforts are actually working?
First and foremost, I think engagement on what you're doing. If it's landing with people, people are going to engage. Now, also you have the algorithm to fight with. So if you're struggling to really get yourself established on social media and get engagement, you need to get out there into the real world and talk to people. Do some market research and see if what you're saying is landing in the way that you want. So if we're just talking about the brand and not like actual sales where you have hard numbers to look at and like this is working or it isn't, I would look at, are you getting engagement? Are people interested in what you have to say? Are people talking about you when you're not in the room in a good way? That is the goal of a brand, right? It's like, let's get people talking about us. When you are consistent and showing up online, it's going to feel like, I see this person everywhere. Like, where did they come from? I like what they're doing. I want to follow along. And so I think that, one of the key indicators there would be engagement and how it's being received.
And so besides engagement, how do you, as Shannon Claire, how do you define success in personal branding? Like when you look at your clients, how do you determine whether you have a successful client or an unsuccessful client?
I go more internal. How are they feeling about themselves? How do they view themselves now in the world? And as far as their brand goes. And if they view it as a success, then I call that a success.
Amazing. Is there any, let's say I come into you and I want you to help me build my personal brand. Is there any specific tools? I don't know, maybe tests online or a kit or something, some type of resource, that you use or that people can use to kind of build their own personal brand?
Well, I have my own system I take people through, and questions that I've developed over years. I think that if you're just DIYing and, trying to figure this out on your own, any of the personality tests out there, they're going to be a fun tool to kind of help you see where your strengths may lie. So if you've never done a strengths finder test or the Enneagram or any of those, just pick a couple, have fun with it. See what they have to say about you. And that could give you a good starting place to start building on your own.
Have you done the Enneagram test?
You know what? I actually haven't. And it's something I've been meaning to do for so long because people are always trying to guess what mine is. And I always get different thoughts. So I am curious as to what mine is.
At a previous company that I worked at, we did like a team bonding virtual retreat. And one of the things that we did is we brought in somebody to run this test. And then he put us through all of these different things on like how we conflict with each other and how we can help each other and how we should speak to each other. Cause there was some, internal issues, going on. Oh, it's type 3 is the achiever. I am self-assured, attractive, and charming, ambitious, confident, energetic. But sometimes I look at this and I'm like, I don't know about all that. But it says,
hey, that's your mean girl coming out to play.
Yeah, but basic fear, being worthless. That's very true. Desire to feel valuable and worthwhile. That's very true. And then it says, if you have a 2-wing, the charmer. If you have a 4-wing, the professional. But I don't think I had any wings. I think that was mine. But now reading through this again, It makes so much sense. Wanting to be affirmed, to distinguish themselves from others, to have attention. That's totally me. But I highly recommend taking it because it was really fun. And it was really fun having like an instructor do it to teach us more specifically about each one and how your number should interact with others and how those numbers should interact with you, just for, communication styles. It was really cool.
I used to be actually trained. I was a trainer for something called the color code. I think it changed to being called the people code, but it's similar to that, where you learn like, what is your inner motive? What are you driven by? What are the shortcomings? What are the strengths of that, and how to interact with other people of different colors and learn to recognize them. And I liked it. It was simple because there's only 4 colors,
right?
But it made so much sense, and it still informs me to this day with what I'm about and like what I need to focus on. And for me, it's relationships and fun. So literally everything I do in my business is about building relationships, having impact and meaning, and like making it fun.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for your insight on personal branding. If any of our listeners wanted to get in touch with you, what is the best way they can reach out?
They can find me on Instagram, for one, at @TheShannonClaire, or email is fine too. It's Shannon@TheShannonClaire.com.
Okay. And I will make sure I drop your links and your email in the description as well for anyone who is interested in taking on a personal branding journey. And now for our favorite part of the show, can you please share with us what your favorite cocktail or mocktail is?
Yeah, I am classic with a margarita.
Okay.
So that's my go-to.
Is there a specific tequila that you like?
No, I usually just tell them, just give me a good one. But what I learned when I was in Mexico recently, there is a Mexican liquor called Damiana. If you can get your hands on that and add that to your margarita, it's out of this world. Now I don't like to have them without it.
Okay. Now I also like margarita. So I'm not normally a tequila person. Okay. Like it's just me and tequila. We don't get along, but I do like a good margarita. When I was in Costa Rica in February, I had my fair share of margaritas, but I like my margaritas to be made with silver tequila, and I like them to be spicy. So I'm a big like jalapeno margarita. So are you just plain Jane, or do you like to spice it up with some other things?
No, I'm plain Jane. I like the classic fresh squeezed lime juice, simple syrup, Cointreau, tequila, and the Damiana. And I'm set. Salted rim, not sugar.
Awesome. All right, Shannon. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show with us today. And I will, again, drop all those links for all of our listeners to find you in the description. And thank you guys for listening.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode. Tune in next time for another special guest and, of course, more cocktails.
Don't forget to grab your favorite drink and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Marketing Mixologist Pod.
Cheers.